Welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to have a look at virtual environment for Python. Virtual env, virtual environment, will allow you to create virtualized and isolated environments for Python, and a virtual env in Python is a self-contained directory that includes a Python interpreter and isolated libraries and dependencies. Essentially it's a sandboxed environment that allows developers to run projects independently from the system-wide Python installation or other projects. And one of the main reasons you need a virtual environment is when you have two projects that rely on different versions of the same library. So projects often have different and potentially conflicting dependencies. For example, one project might need Django 3.3 while another project needs a different version of Django, let's say 3.0. And virtual environments allow developers to replicate an exact setup. So developers can work on multiple projects simultaneously, each with unique requirements. Virtual environments make it simple to switch between the different projects without worrying about conflicting packages or configurations. So when you're starting a new project, you may as well create a dedicated virtual environment for it as well. This way you're not going to run into dependency errors and conflicts of writing to the same directories and things like that. So virtual environments let you have a stable, reproducible and portable environment. So basically you are in control of which packages, versions are installed and when they are upgraded. And by the way, Python version 3.3 and above comes with virtual env by default. However, if you do need to install it, you can run the pip install virtual env command from the terminal and it will install it for you. Let's have a look at virtual environment. Now we will have a look at these virtual environments. I have 3 different versions of Python installed, and I also have PyCharm installed. And within PyCharm we can go ahead and click on new project. So I can name my project and give it a location. I can even create a Git repository and create a welcome script. It's just a basic script you get familiar with Python. And then here is my interpreter type. So these are my environments. We can use the default project virtual environment, and there's also others as well. We've got base, conda, and then there's custom environment. Actually I've got select existing here. If I click on generate new, which is the default, we can specify the type of environment here. So there's virtual environment, which we will be having a look at, but there is conda as well, which is another popular one, and there's pip environment and poetry. So we will stick with virtual environment. And then we've got Python here. We can specify our Python version. I'm going to go with, let's say, version 3.12, but you can also install them directly from here if there was a particular Python version you needed for this virtual environment. So let's go with 3.12. The inherit packages from base interpreter. This gives your virtual environment access to the global site packages. So it's for packages you have already installed on your physical host. So this way we are using the packages installed on our physical host. So let's click create to create this virtual environment. So it has now done that. We can see the virtual environment here and the associated folders and libraries. But what we can do is go to file, settings, and then project. And the project name for us was Python project. I could have changed this to another name, of course, but we left it at the default. And then there's the Python interpreter here. So this is where you can confirm the Python interpreter. So we can choose or add interpreters from here, add a local interpreter, and we can see our location and the base interpreter. So this is the base interpreter. So we can change things around if required. But I'm going to cancel out of here. I'm happy with the changes. I'm happy with the settings. And if we go to the terminal, here are some commands with virtual environment. So this is not specific to PyCharm. These are commands you can use in any environment associated with the virtual environment application. So the first command is pip list. Now to list the packages installed in the virtual environment, we use the pip list command. And by default this will only have pip installed. We can see pip is installed 23.2.1. But if we install a particular version of NumPy 1.26.3, let's say for example we needed this particular version for this environment. So we go ahead and install it. And we can install anything else as well. Let's go ahead and install another popular library called pandas. So that's done. We can do a pip list again. And now we can see a lot more packages have been installed. We can see NumPy, Pandas, etc. down here. And we can see it's telling us a new release of pip is available. So we could go ahead and run this command to install that as well. But going back to PyCharm specific, we can also go to File, Settings again, Project Python Interpreter, and we can install the libraries and packages from here as well, simply by clicking the plus package here. And because I'm doing this on a virtual machine, it's quite slow, so it's not populating, but usually it would populate with packages. Actually, the packages have appeared. So, I mean, there's so many packages, that's why it gives you the ability to search as well. You can click on any of these. It usually shows a description, a lot more information. It looks like it's struggling to pull that down. And you can specify a specific version as well. So there's many packages to choose from. And we install the package by just clicking the install package icon over here. Let's click close and cancel. And by the way, to verify you're in the virtual environment, we can see the virtual environment label on the left hand side here. And there's two of the common commands. One is to come out of the virtual environment and the other one is to go into the virtual environment. So to come out of it, it's deactivate. And this is what happens when you spell the command incorrectly. So I've deactivated now, and we can see it's deactivated because we was in the virtual environment, but now we are out of it. Actually, we can do a pip list here to see what's installed on the physical host. We're not in the virtual environment, we're on the physical host now, so we can see only pip and setup tools is installed. Where in the virtual environment there was only pip installed, and then we installed some more libraries. And to go back into the virtual environment, we specify activate. Actually, I missed a few bits, not activate on its own, but we need the name to the virtual environment, followed by scripts, and then followed by activate. So we are back in the virtual environment again, we can see on the left hand side. And we would follow this process if we had more virtual environments. We would specify the virtual environment name, followed by scripts, followed by activate to go into another virtual environment. Or to create a new virtual environment, we can go to the bottom right hand side as well, add new interpreter. Add local interpreter. Now this is where we was near the beginning as well. Now let's create a new virtual environment. New. Let's give it another location. Let's call it VN2. So this is virtual environment 2. Maybe for this one we are dependent on the Python interpreter 3.13. So let's click on OK and we will create this new virtual environment. So now that we've added a second environment, let's jump out of the first environment by using the deactivate command. And then let's copy this, paste it in, location, and we called it VENV2 for virtual environment 2. Let's click OK on that. And now we can see on the left hand side, we're in virtual environment 2. So what we can do here is a pip list. And we can see it's only got pip installed again because it's a new virtual environment. And by the way, we can see it over here as well. So we've got our first virtual environment here, and then VNV2 for our second virtual environment. But let's say, for example, for this particular environment, we wanted the latest version, the latest and stable version of NumPy. So we went ahead and installed NumPy, and it's installing its collected packages. And while it's downloading, this is the whole point of NumPy. So we've got 2.1.3 downloading, which means this specific environment has its own version, has its own dependent version of NumPy. So this environment may be dependent on this particular version of NumPy. And if we do a pip list again, it will confirm the libraries installed for this particular environment, which is NumPy version 2.1.3. And by the way, you can pick your specific interpreter from the bottom right. It looks like I picked the same Python version for both of these projects, version 3.13. Let me choose a new one with version 3.12. I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to choose a new one for version 3.12. So I will choose Python 3.12 as the base interpreter, and I will create a virtual environment 3, VENV3. Now I can click on OK to create it. And of course I can create many other environments as well. So the environments are unlimited actually, but you can create as many environments as you need. Notice it has populated the packages with the one package. I'll click OK and let it finish things off in the background. Now I have it as an option on the right hand side. We can change our interpreter by choosing it from the bottom right. So now that we have these two virtual environments with the different versions of NumPy installed, we can take a look at the versions of NumPy just to see the differences. So this one in Venv2 is using 2.1.3, and if we deactivate from virtual environment 2, actually we don't need to go into the other environments. We have the history here. I can scroll up and check the history because I just want to see the version of NumPy installed. So you can see in virtual environment 1 we have NumPy 1.26.3 installed because it may be dependent on that particular version. And for virtual environment 2 we have NumPy.2.1.3 installed because this one is dependent on this particular version of NumPy. And one more thing I forgot to show, if you wanted to delete the virtual environment, you can just right click the virtual environment folder, the root folder, and click on delete. Or you could even copy the path, the absolute path, and down here if we specify RM for remove and then paste in the path, the items has children and recursive parameters was not specified. Alright, so it wants you to delete them recursively and we did not specify that in the command. So if you continue, all children will be removed with the items. Are you sure you want to continue? And you can use Y for yes or an A for yes to all. So I guess that's removed the virtual environment. Now that I have given it a refresh, virtual environment 1 has been removed. And that's it. That's a high level overview of virtual environments. It's absolutely essential. We use them at every opportunity to make sure we isolate and contain our environments.